Welcome to First Parish. If you haven't been here before, I hope you appreciate the beauty of the place. This church has stood here since the mid-1700s, and not this particular building, but this is the fourth version of similar meeting houses. And, you know, increasingly over the years, the church went from those kind of standard Christian Orthodox values and became increasingly liberal and progressive, and understood the value of tolerance and understood the value of fighting for disenfranchised voices. And Unitarian Universalism has largely embraced that, and we embrace that as we do today. So Cecilia is going to share some logistics about coffee hour after and bathrooms and such. Do you want to take it over?
Yes, and this is Reverend Wilson. He likes to have a disguise, but yes, I'm Celia Brown. Welcome. It's wonderful to see you all here, and thank you both for being here. Looking forward to this. Yes, please, we don't have any facilities in this building, but next door in Parish Hall, there are bathrooms, and also there'll be a reception afterwards with some cold drinks and some yummies to eat. And please, if you have cell phones, remember to turn them off so you're not the one that gets embarrassed when it goes ding, 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 ding.
We're not that tolerant.
We're not that tolerant. Yeah, that's right. There are limits to the tolerance of UUs. But thank you very much. And any questions afterwards, and any questions about the church in particular, we do have some information in the back and also over here on the stand in terms of what we believe, and but more importantly, the dignity of all people. We're glad you're here, and we are co-sponsoring this with GAIN.
Yep.
And go ahead.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Celia. My name is Mitch Cohen. I'm on the board of GAIN, the Greater Assabet Indivisible Network. Indivisible, for those not familiar, is a nationwide, loosely affiliated set of organizations formed primarily currently for nonviolent resistance to the Trump regime and the authoritarian efforts that are undergoing in Washington and impacting us all. So we have many members of GAIN, including most of the board here today. We're looking forward to speaking with anyone afterwards at the reception. But I'm very proud to introduce two friends of mine now. We're, of course, here to hear from Videl Leins. Videl is a 17-year-old, 17 years of experience with the U.S. Air Force, until very recently, Staff Sergeant. She will tell you a little bit more, or a lot more about her experience there. And interviewing Videl is our friend Chrissi Bates. Many of you have seen Chrissi and heard Chrissi before at other GAIN events. Chrissi is an outspoken advocate for healthcare rights, particularly for transgender healthcare rights, and has a lot of experience in health and human services at the state level and a number of other organizations. And we're very happy to now listen to the two of them for the next hour. We'll have a Q&A afterwards. So get your questions ready, and we'll talk more about that when we get there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mitch. Thank you. This is a really great opportunity for Videl to get your story out to the community and really show the humanness, that you're human, and that there's a story behind what you as a person, I guess. And so thank you to GAIN, and thank you to the Unitarian Universalists. Reverend Steve, thank you to the entire group that has really put this together and really made it easy to actually just be here and interview you today. So that is incredible. And it was just really accessible, and I really appreciate that, because right now, if you're outside of Massachusetts or the 12 other states that are mentioned by Trump on a daily basis, you would know it's really frightening to be trans right now in this world, and it's a really scary place to be in, with the federal administration just making fun of us on a daily basis, saying trans for everyone. even though it's a really big personal healthcare decision that we make. So I'm excited to ask Videl some questions, and I guess I'll get started. So Videl, you served in the U.S. Air Force for 17 years, rising to the rank of Staff Sergeant. So tell us about where you served around the world.
Absolutely. So I initially joined the U.S. Air Force in November of 2008. What sparked that is my grandfather. He served, and hearing the stories growing up from him, it inspired me. So as soon as I graduated high school, I had about a 3-month break, did the oath, and left. My first base, I was stationed at Minot, North Dakota. And I was there for a few years, and I deployed in 2010 to Iraq. And then when I got back from there, shortly after, I got orders, and then I got stationed in Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada. And I was there from 2012 until 2018. And then during that period, I had a couple more deployments. And then in December of 18, I got orders, and then I ended up in Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam for 4 years. From there, I deployed to Korea, did a 6-month tour. And then luckily, after my 4-year tour in Hawaii, I got orders to be stationed in Korea, which was a very beautiful, very warming station in there. It was about that time period when I decided it was time for me to open up to the Air Force. Transgenders were allowed to be serving openly, but I was still a little conservative on opening that door to everybody. And then shortly after, I got orders and I PCS'd to Nellis again in 2023. And that's when I decided this is it. This is time to be open to who I am. And then I was in Nellis until recently, November. So.
Wow, so you went like everywhere in the world. That's really crazy. So could you tell us about the last position you were working in prior to you being removed from the military?
Absolutely. Up till the time of the Trump administration's ban on transgenders for serving, I was serving as the electrical sub-amp manager. And for people who don't know what that is, I was in charge of the entire electrical infrastructure on the base of Nellis Air Force Base, billions of dollars of equipment and infrastructure. I was in charge of making sure that any contract work that was getting done properly and through the proper channels. So I was in charge of a very big part of the mission.
Yeah, so you just talked about like properly, you were making sure it was properly done. So can you tell us others in the military that depended upon your knowledge, skills, and capabilities, like what people would be depending on your knowledge in the military, like maybe their rankings or who would depend on you, I guess?
Yes, so my career, I was an electrician. So without me and my airmen, the mission wouldn't work. We kept the lights on, we kept the airfield powered, and without the power, planes didn't fly. There was a lot of people that would lean on my specialties, and I loved sharing the knowledge that I learned throughout the Air Force. And any of the airmen I had, I made sure that they were trained properly and they understood what the safety of the work.
So in some capacity, you were a supervisor, right? And you were a leadership position.
Yes.
Okay. And then, so what stands out as the proudest moment of your military career?
The proudest moment, that was a hard one to think of. I've probably been asked that 100 times. For me, it was volunteering to go to Iraq. In 2010, a deployment came down. We had a few people that were able to go, but through other resources, they weren't able to go. So I volunteered at a cycle. So when you volunteer at a cycle, that would mean like if you deploy and you come back, you had a chance to deploy again without any rest cycle. But for me, it wasn't even a question. Like that was why I joined the military, was to serve my country.
Well, that's really cool. I see, Iraq is not my thing. um, but glad it is for you. So during your service, how did the military evaluate the quality of your work and rate you on your performance review? So I guess like when was your last performance review before the Trump administration or anything in that context?
Okay, so for the performance reviews, the Air Force is a little bit corporate in that aspect. They do evaluate everything that you do. It's your job performance, to your training. So if you aren't meeting certain milestones, then it's going to affect your performance, and then that performance review that you receive also affects your promotion statuses. But throughout the Air Force, my career, I've never had any bad performance reviews. I've always been golden, so I've always held a higher standard for myself.
Okay. So in 2022, while you were still, and you mentioned this, while you were still on active duty at Nellis Air Force Base, you began living openly as a trans woman. And so tell us about your transition. How did it come about, or kind of talk about that?
Absolutely. So when I decided to come out with the Air Force, there's steps. They're very corporate. So in order to transition in the Air Force, you have to first get a diagnosis through a therapist for gender dysphoria, which is horrible, and most therapists don't like doing that, but you just have to follow the rules. So I had to go see a therapist for about 6 months, get the diagnosis of gender dysphoria, and then after that, then I was allowed to start my hormones, and then I was allowed to start the process of seeing doctors of possible surgeries that I would need. And the surgeries aren't something that you can just immediately get like people think. I was in the works of getting FFS through the Air Force, and it took about 1.5 years before I could even get to the point of going to a doctor and getting just initial evaluations and x-rays and stuff. When I did come out and start that process, my leadership was completely on my side. Everyone was wonderful. It was a very accepting experience with my supervision and my commander. And I had no one treated me differently. No one thought like I can not do the mission. My training still stayed on par. My education was still going, and it never affected my performance report. And I believe me being honest about who I was actually made my airmen trust me a little bit more. And I had a much better rapport with my fellow airmen.
Wow. So say that part. So for people that might not know, you mentioned FFS. Can people raise their hand if they know what FFS is? Okay. So that's okay if you don't know. So that's facial feminization procedure. And did you say you were about 5 days? You were 5 days out from having it?
Yes, I was 5 days away from the actual surgery date before the Trump's administration ban got all that stopped for the military.
And it took you 1.5 years in terms of getting all the insurance, getting the therapy in order. Okay, wow. I'm sorry that happened. Terribly sorry. Wow. So you talked a little bit, you talked about, your transition. And so let's go into basically this military policy targeting trans people right now that's currently impacting you. So how did you first learn about the Trump administration's policy barring transgender military people from the service?
So the day Trump won was the day we all knew. It was not a question of if, it was a question of when. And for us in the Air Force, when was in January. So about January 20th was when the Air Force really started pushing the policies through. The Air Force, sadly, was one of the first branches to give and was one of the first to start rolling out all these horrible policies. And around February, we all got put on administrative absence, which is basically we were told we were not worthy enough to wear the uniform, stay home.
Well, I'm sorry, and I just saw that. I could see it in your face how that hurt you. So, what type of discharge did you receive, and how has your discharge affected your life outside the military?
So the type of discharges that we are receiving right now are mixed. Some people are getting some weird codes, but the code that is the most majority is a voluntary separation code. So what was offered is we either accept a voluntary separation where we just say, okay, we're done, we're out, or do an involuntary separation, which would be possible court-martial, your name, your service record, everything's gonna get dragged through the mud, and possible dishonorable discharge, which would affect all of your benefits. So I don't know if you've heard, I'm gonna steal this from my girlfriend, but she told me basically, if anyone that has heard of this comedian, Eddie Izzard, she has a little bit called Cake or Death, and that was the option that we were given. And so majority of us took the cake and took the voluntary separation.
Sorry, it's tough to hear it. And I'm, again, sorry for this. Once the policy was announced, what choices, so basically you've already talked about this, so it's like, so basically the choices transgender service members were facing were essentially a voluntary separation, or they would be forced out and it would be honorable discharge most likely. Is that?
Yeah, and a lot of people don't want to go that route because with a dishonorable discharge, you lose your GI Bill, so school is now off the table. You lose VA benefits, you lose everything. So that's usually not an option, especially for people who have families.
I guess it's not a question in this list, but I guess it's a question that I have. To your knowledge, how many trans service members do you think are currently still in the military right now?
That is a very hard one to answer. There's definitely thousands. There is a good group of people that are taking the involuntary separation route. They're trying to fight to stay in, and that looks ugly. It's either going to be hopefully a good win for some, but right now it's not looking very well for any involuntary separations.
Nice. So I'll go back to the questions. So now we're going to focus on the lawsuit that you are in. That you are a what is it? Is it plaintiff or?
Yes, I am one of the named plaintiffs.
Named plaintiffs, yeah. So Videl Leins is a named plaintiff on a Supreme Court case, Shilling versus United States, and she was doing wonderful advocacy online and still does wonderful advocacy in promoting her case with Lambda Ligo. And so I'm going to get into some questions about the actual lawsuit itself. So how did you become involved in this lawsuit against the federal government? And did organizations like the Human Rights Campaign or Lambda Legal approach you, or did you reach out to them?
That's a great question. So I learned about the lawsuit through a friend, and she encouraged me to attempt to get on it because Lambda Legal and HRC early on, I would say like around December of last year, or 23, were already getting ready. So I joined the suit in January. I reached out to Lambda and they liked my story. So they put me on to the case.
And then, yeah, so this was, okay. And then what do you hope the lawsuit will accomplish, and like kind of talk about where the lawsuit is now, I guess?
So right now we're waiting on the Court of Appeals. The outcome that I think is most likely is going to happen is eventually it's going to be kind of similar to the individuals who got released for the COVID vaccines. So a lot of us are kind of hoping something similar to that will happen, where all this will get blown away and we'll be offered our positions back. So that's really what we're hoping for.
And so, so where's the lawsuit currently stuck? So it's stuck right now in appellate courts, right?
Yes, we're waiting on the judge's decision right now.
So do you see this Trump administrative executive order in banning transgender persons from military service as just part of a broad administration campaign to eliminate transgender persons from being, like, do you think the overall ban is much more than just the transgender military ban? Do you think Trump is trying to erase us trans people?
Absolutely. I think this ban is nothing but just fear mongering and hate. There's no justification. There's nothing that, no tangible evidence that we're a strain on any mission capabilities. We're always deployable. Even if we got a surgery, it's nothing different than like a back surgery or someone getting knee surgery. It's going to put you out of being able to deploy, but it's usually only for about 30 days or so. And the big argument that the opposition has is a part that kind of makes no sense. They say that we drain resources, and the cash amount is about $3 to $5 million a year that the United States military spends on transgender care, and that's surgeries, hormones, compared to the $40 to $50 million a year that they spend on ED medication.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. So, okay. Okay, so their evidence behind it is just not really consistent with factual evidence.
Correct. They're really reaching on avenues to pin us as either a bane on resources or we're non-deployable, which are completely untrue.
So now I'm going to go into the impact of the policy. So how has the Trump administration executive order banning transgender persons from military service affected your daily life, your mental well-being, or your overall sense of security?
Imagine having your government spend millions of dollars campaigning on hate. When you see billboards saying that you aren't worthy enough to be in the uniform, that you are an enemy to the state, there is no good thought in your head. It's very sad, it's very disruptive, and it's hurting a lot of people, especially with families. Again, a lot of military spouses don't work because of the load that the military brings to the table. A lot of PCSs, deployments, a lot of moving, so it's hard to keep a job when you're a spouse. And with all of this going on, and the service members losing the jobs, and then you have your government just telling you that you aren't worthy, it's definitely a very hostile, very chaotic buzz that will be in your head.
Dysregulating, right? Dysregulating. It's a hostile world. It's a hostile federal government. It's a hostile government takeover. And so, yeah, it's very dysregulating when you know you can get the job done. You can light up an airfield, and the government's telling you that you can't. It's very dysregulating, and it's essentially lying to you as a person. So yeah, I definitely validate those things for you. So I also think that it's important to mention you're moving, right? Because of this, one reason.
Yes, I've had to completely uproot my life. Both myself and my partners have had to move because of this. A lot of upfront costs. It's just been a very stressful couple of months.
Yeah, you were on like you were driving and moving right before you even came here. But you figured that you're in the middle of a closing, right, with your house and stuff. And you were still, this was so important to you to come here to really talk about this issue, not in just a virtual forum, but to be able to talk about it like in front of people, in a room of people, so that it's not taboo, so that it's not dark, so that people don't think that we're just a porn video or an AI porn video, that we're an actual human being, right? And, even just thinking about like when we were sitting here and I just thought it was so cool with this as a background, because it really shows, being in a Unitarian space, it really goes and shows that she's a human and you have spirit within you, right? You're here because of some spirit, whether you're an atheist or you're whatever. I felt this was an awesome place to really do this kind of event. And really, it's probably one of the only places around here that I would have felt comfortable hosting this. I mean, we don't want to be doing this in Northborough gym, like a school gym. We need people that give a damn, that care. And we see Seth Moulton here. Thank you for making it here. Yeah, it's just I'm sorry you're going through this, and it's really, you're a human, and you can get your job done. It's just the government is paying millions of dollars to put propaganda out there to dehumanize you and to make you feel like you can't do your job, and they forced you out of your job, is what's happening. So I guess I'm going to go on to the next question. So we're going to go into like looking forward in advocacy. So you spent most of your adult life serving in the military. How did it feel to be told that you no longer belonged because of who you are?
It was a very horrible thing. Just imagine someone telling you that the space that you are in is unwelcoming because of who you are. It's a very terrible, horrible thing to say to anybody, and especially in the military. It's my whole career. Military is it's a hot pot of culture. You get people from all over the world, and it's no two people think or act the same. It's a family, and to see that family just shun you out, it's not a fun experience.
Yeah, so for 17 years, everyone around you was your brother and sister.
Yes.
And now there's this policy in place where it's just removed just your demographic. So that is disheartening, obviously. So how can civilians, advocates, legislators, allies best support transgender service members in today's fragmented political environment?
Speaking up. We need voices. It's hard to advocate for ourselves when no one listens to us, because they just think we're just boots. They just think we're just expendable soldiers. A lot of us want to be there. It's a calling. It's not something that you just decide to do. And for me, it was more than a career. And that's the best thing that anyone can do for any service member, is speak up for them and just be a voice. And that will carry a lot farther than our voices can ever go.
Yeah, and I think too, it's showing up, like what you guys are doing now, showing up. And it's nice that Seth Moulton is here because he served in the military himself, and he's a captain, a retired captain of the Marines. And so for him to show up today really, you know, is what we need to be doing, because this is just inhumane. It's dehumanizing you as a person, and you're fully capable. Like, so basically, if the government said you could return back to work, you would be able to resume the task that you were doing, and there would be no issue.
Absolutely. I can almost assure that the majority of us that got separated, we still want to serve. There are going to be some outliers who have been hurt, and they probably wouldn't be able to continue their service anymore. And for those people, it is very sad for how much this government has been hurting its own soldiers.
So do you have a message to share with other transgender service members right now? Do you have any advice for them, thoughts?
You're not alone. Find community. Hold on to each other. Things will get better.
Well, thank you for your time, like answering questions from me. And now I want to kind of open it up to the general public. I don't know if Seth Moulton, if you wanted to make any remarks, if you were interested, that would be really nice. I don't know which mic you would. Yeah, this mic would be good. Yeah, thank you.
There's no greater. Serving our country in the Marines changed my life. I certainly would not be standing here as a member of Congress today if not for that experience. In fact, I felt like I saw the consequences of failed leadership in Washington when I was in Iraq, and that's what inspired me to run. The reality today is that there's a very small percentage of Americans who serve. There's a small percentage of Americans who are willing to put their lives on the line for our country in a very dangerous world, a world made increasingly dangerous by this president. And the fact that this president, who was a draft dodger himself, who allowed someone else to go in his place when he was asked to serve, would attack heroes who were willing to make that sacrifice for us, no matter who they are. It's just fundamentally un-American. You know, I mean, we live in a part of the country that is very proud of our revolutionary heritage. And quick story. When Kevin McCarthy, probably not everybody's favorite person, was sworn in as speaker a few years ago, and I think one of the shortest-lived speakerships in American history, he gave this speech that everyone kind of forgot about because it was like 2 o'clock in the morning because it took so long for the Republicans to get their act together. And his favorite portrait is of Washington crossing the Delaware. And if you look at that picture of all the American troops in the boat, first of all, we all grow up in school and we're told it's not really accurate because Washington wouldn't have been standing in the boat. Not many people know that that regiment bringing him across the river was from my hometown of Marblehead. And let me tell you, a bunch of Marbleheaders could handle one Virginia standing. All right? The other thing about that boat is it's remarkably diverse. And Kevin McCarthy got up there and said, you know, I love this painting. Of course, it's not historically accurate because we wouldn't have had such a diverse group of volunteers back then. And he's wrong about that. Marblehead was a very backwater town at the time, but it was also an incredibly progressive and liberal, and at the time known for being anti-religious town. And as a result, they would welcome everybody to serve. So back in the 1770s, they had Native Americans, Black Americans, and a whole cast of characters that were part of Glover's regiment, really the predecessors to the United States Marines. Now imagine if George Washington had said, yeah, no, you're out of the boat.
you're out of the boat when he was crossing the Delaware. Imagine if Eisenhower had come in after Truman said Black Americans are allowed to serve in our military, and the military is desegregated, and said, nope, you got to get out. That's what's happening today. And just because it's happening to a smaller number of Americans doesn't make it any more justified. And so, look, I've been a consistent advocate on the Armed Services Committee for allowing anyone who wants to serve the country and meets the qualifications to serve. And by the way, the second piece does matter. I mean, we're not a completely egalitarian military that says, well, you can be totally out of shape and we'll still let you serve, all right? But if you meet the standards, as every one of the transgender service members has, that's how they got in the first place, then it's actually a cost to us taxpayers when you go through all the efforts to kick them out. It's a cost to the soldiers, sailors, Marines, and airmen who have the honor of serving with these great Americans when they get kicked out. It's a cost to all of us for our national security when the president, rather than bringing the country together, sows division in the very people who are supposed to be fighting for our freedoms. And as a veteran myself, I'm ashamed, as a member of this government, I'm ashamed that we have not been able yet, although we will, stop this from happening because it is so fundamentally un-American. It's un-American in 2026, but to the point of my story, it was un-American in 1776 as well. So thank you for not only having the courage to serve, for putting your lives on the line for the country, but having the courage to stand up today and keep fighting for that right, not just for yourself, but so that a lot of other great Americans will have it in the future. That's good for all of us, and it's great for our country.
I'm so profoundly impressed by who you are, both as somebody who has been through what you've been through and as what you've described as your service. My father, similar to you, got out of high school when he was a lot older than you and went over to, got into the Air Force and went to fight in Europe. He remained involved with the Air Force through his young life and was a recruiter, not a recruiter, a reserve, and retired as a captain. And I've always been very proud of that service, and I'm very proud of the Air Force because as a little kid, I watched my dad go off to his reserve activities and thought he was the most handsome man in the world. And I'm really ashamed today to think about what happened and that the Air Force was one of the first to fold. So that being said, I just want to say, I come from Worcester. I belong to a church called Hadwin Park Congregational Church. We have an LGBT asylum task force, and we are an open and affirming church. What I have found, and I would ask you this question, ignorance creates fear, and fear is what is driving this. And this isn't just in the military. This is in our entire society. And I have people who I'm very good friends with, but don't understand. And we have a gender roundtable at our church. But how do we get this across the nation, across our entire country? That's a big question.
That's a big question, yeah.
I think your question was, how do we get the discussion? I think there's a lot of misinformation, miscommunication, and through that is where the fear, the anger, and the hate is created. I think what needs to happen is we need people to sit down together and just talk. I was telling Chrissi a story from while I was flying here from Illinois. I was waiting. My flight got delayed because of the snow, so I was an extra hour, so I decided to go get a drink. And an individual from Texas, I learned, sat next to me, and we had a great conversation. He had a couple questions about me, And I was obviously wonderful to, like, I love questions. And so I was respectful and I answered the questions to him, and he was respectful and had a great dialogue. And he ended up finding me on Facebook, and then he left to go get on his plane. He messages me on Facebook Messenger saying I convinced him that the federal government wants us to hate each other and that we had a great discussion, and he thinks there's nothing wrong. Like having that human element is really what we need, and we just need people to talk.
Thank you so much for coming and talking about this topic that many of us have no access to. I have two more simple questions, very quickly. Number one, I'm curious about, once this rule came down, it was clear you were going to be kicked out of the military. How did your coworkers respond to that? And second, as part of the lawsuit, has anyone kind of calculated the monetary loss of kicking people out of the military because of this, not only because of the money invested in you, in your training, and and all that stuff?
Yes, so for the first question, it was a lot of mixed. A lot of people just didn't believe it was happening. Majority of people didn't even know it was happening. And it's sad because during the time of me having to go, it's a lot of process to get kicked out. It's not just, oh, there's the gate, goodbye. It's a lot of paperwork, a lot of different agencies you have to see. And each time you go in to see someone, they already know what the issue is and why you're there. And they're like, oh my gosh, this is horrible, I'm sorry. By the way, sign here. So it's a lot of mixed. And I would say for my coworkers that I worked with day to day, it was a lot different. There was a lot of sympathy. They were sad, they were angry, they were mad. But again, there's nothing they can do. They can only speak up so much because it's also their jobs on the line if they don't play ball too. I'm sorry, what was the second?
The cost.
Oh, the cost,
economic.
yes. So the cost, I don't think there's an official number yet, but for all the individuals who are taking whether you're taking the voluntary or involuntary separation route, they are paying us a severance. It's a weird equation, depending on your time of service, how long you've been in, your pay grade and all that. So some people are getting like 50,000, some people are getting 400,000. It just depends on your rank and your time of service and your pay grade.
Yeah, that wasn't really my question. It was more about the cost to the government and to the taxpayers, about the loss of your skills and your training, and not only the money that they pay to train you and all the others, but
that amount it's priceless. I've seen hundreds of millions and I've seen billions, because it does cost a lot to train someone, and especially with the experience of individuals. I believe the number was somewhere around 60% of transgender service members are considered career, which is 15 years or more. So that's a lot of experience, a lot of years of being lost.
Thank you.
So I have sort of two questions. One is like around what you're talking about around advocacy. So I know it's important to speak up, but can you speak to sort of the avenues that you would take? And then I have a question about the ones that are left behind. I assume they would consider themselves stealth. I mean, how do you stay behind? Oh, maybe they're suing. They're the ones that are suing.
There are a lot of individuals who haven't fully transitioned, so they haven't gotten the diagnosis. So that's definitely going to be individuals who are going to be hiding. And it's the same thing as like don't ask, don't tell. There's always going to be people. We're always there, regardless of policy.
I just want to mention, I find it very interesting, like the question, your answer to the last question as well, in terms of how a lot of the transgender folks in the military, they're veteran, they have a lot of years of in the military before they come out. I think that speaks to like stabilizing and them having a source of income for them to even try to find that Maslow's hierarchy of needs, probably. Like I just found that.
So thank you very much for being here. I really appreciate it. As a lesbian who very, very vividly remembers when we were fighting for same-sex marriage, I was one of the ones who says, well, I ain't never going to see that in my lifetime. So I'm curious, HRC has done wonderful things with the lesbian and gay community. Have they been there for you and the transgender community also? And you mentioned Lambda Legal, so are they taking the bull by the horns and bringing this? I know it's going to go all the way to the Supreme Court, and that scares the hell out of me because of the court that we have right now. But are they really there for you, like they were way back when?
Absolutely. I have complete faith in Lambda Legal and HRC. They have amazing resources, amazing lawyers and outreach. They are very trained, and I have faith in their capabilities, and they have been amazing allies for the LGBTQ+.
It's kind of a stupid question, but I just found out, when you mentioned that most people would continue serving if they would, I was going to ask you, do you feel that, are you one of those people who would go back in a heartbeat, or do you feel that sense of betrayal, like, oh, they've hurt me too much, they're going to hurt me again, never mind? Like, what group do you consider yourself a part of?
I think in the beginning, I was probably on the group saying, this has hurt me, I don't think I can trust them anymore.
Yeah.
But I still have that sense of duty, and I believe if this got repealed, I more than likely would go back. I did 17 years. I had a blast. I loved the people I worked with. I loved my career. I saw parts of the world that without the military I would have never seen. Met people from around the world that I would have never met, and it's a ride that I don't want to get off yet.
So worth it, because I'm in a similar situation. Like, I'm not in the military yet, but I've been trying to join, but the Navy's been giving me, in the Army, they've been giving me like a, oh, sorry, I think you can hear me, a dead end because of unrelated medical histories that aren't even they don't even apply to me because in the past, just because of labels, it's pretext. So it's like a similar thing. So there are two bills called Fit to Serve with the trans ban, and then there's Qualified to Serve with past diagnoses that carry stigma, lifelong stigma, even if you've proven you're misdiagnosed or that was resolved. So I'm in a similar fight as you. I know it's not about me, but you're not alone, definitely, with thousands of other people who have your back.
Thank you.
So those two bills are Fit to Serve and Qualified to Serve. So everyone can keep their eyes open, try to support that as best we can. Yep, we have one more. We'll take one more after this, and I think we'll then have personal time and go have refreshments. Is that fair? Yeah. You good with it? Okay.
Hi. First, thank you so much. Thank you for your service. I'm a gay guy who would never have the strength to put my body in harm's way or, dedicate so much to that extent. But as a writer who has to work in corporate America, I like to think that I can use my power of writing, to influence positive change. And I've noticed, over the past year, my company's been a little quieter on diversity, equity, inclusion. DEI has become a bad word. The head of the department is now just head of inclusion because that seems safer, I guess. So I was just wondering what your thoughts are on how important inclusion is, whether it's when you're at work, walking through society in general, I was wondering, how did it feel to show up to work not being in the closet anymore when you were out and working the service? Just wanted to hear your thoughts. Thank you.
Great question. I'll start with the end. Being open was amazing. You're a lot more freer. You can be yourself, and without that in the back of the head, it just makes everything in your day-to-day work life much easier. For the first part, inclusion in the military is very important. There are your battle buddy right next to you could be a Texan, and then your commander could be from Boston. So without inclusion and understanding each other, people butt heads. But in the military, we all have that inclusion, we have that family, we have that bond, the understanding. We know that we're all different, and that difference is what makes us stronger. Not very many countries have such a diverse military like the United States, and it is a very strong powerhouse that we have.
Thank you. I know that after World War II, right, it was that part of racial integration pushed the entire country, so.
I was wondering, how did your supervisors and stuff, how did their following the orders make you feel about them? Did it change your opinion of them?
That one, I did lose faith in some individuals. A lot of people did take a lot of Trump's policies to heart. And I had one individual who was above me who told another airman not to refer me as she anymore, and that they should just refer me as Sergeant Leins. And that individual I did lose a lot of faith in. But for the majority of people that I worked with, they were very caring and they were very understanding.
But even the fact that they were following orders, quote unquote, you know?
Correct.
Mitch, you want a final word here?
Yeah, I want to make sure there are no other questions before we close out. Oh, we've got one over here. All right.
Okay.
Thank you so much for coming out and talking to us, and it's always so eye-opening. My question is not necessarily to do with transgender, but with the military in general. I get the impression that the military is like supportive of it. Maybe not the majority, but it seems like the majority are in support of Trump and his administration. Do you find that to be true? And because that's something that I have a very hard time wrapping my head around, like because of his total disrespect for those that serve. Is that something that you have a feel for?
I think a lot of it is fear-driven, and the people, our commanders, our generals, are afraid of being fired. I'm sure you've read about it or seen it, but there was a lot of generals, a lot of leaders that got fired within the first month of Trump taking office. And for someone in the military to speak up against him, I believe they're just afraid of the backlash. So
I can get that, but I also feel like, is it worth selling your soul to back a man, a gentleman like Trump? Because a job, I mean, I know you have to survive, you have to eat, but if my job depended on me backing a man like that, I couldn't do it. And I just have a hard time with that.
yeah, it's a hard one for me to answer, but I do understand some people why they kind of just fell in line. It's sad that it happened, and it's not something that should be forgiven. I will never forgive from what happened. Sorry.
I want to make a comment. I just want to say, I also think that's, I think it's kind of a stretch from not really a stretch from your question, but I think like the toxic white masculinity, just like even in porn, AI porn, a lot of all of those derogatory kind of thoughts that Trump induces, you know, doesn't make the regular household safer. You know, making men more hyper-masculine and more toxic just creates more violence, more domestic. I'm sure there's probably tons of domestic violence calls in the military. No, I'm kidding. I have no idea, but I'm just saying he's inducing a really toxic, hostile environment, and it's hurting households.
Totally. How about a round of applause? Takes a lot of courage. Thank you. Yeah.